Hello, everybody. Welcome. It's another edition of Let's Talk Broncos. We are back, full offseason edition per usual now here for LTB. Combine's happening, Zach. It's a really exciting time. I mean, I remember growing up, man. This is one of my favorite things ever. Switching over to the NFL Network, watching the Combine, watching how fast people were, pretending like I knew every player out there. Oh, this guy's going to be fast. And like in the middle of their 40s saying, screaming out whatever I feel their time is. Yeah, this is 4.55 and trying to guess what the time was going to be. Combine's a great time. I'm excited for it, man. How are you feeling with the Combine and everything full off-season edition right now?
I'm feeling pretty good. I'm excited to get the draft cranked up. I've been working on some prospects. I know you've been working on some prospects. I think LTV is going to have some really awesome draft coverage this season, so excited for that. Yeah, just excited in general. The offseason's cranking up, and this is a point I know you and I both really enjoy, just like thinking about how can the Broncos address these different problems, build their team up, take that next step, and we're going to start really dissecting all of that. I can't wait for it.
Yes. It is a blast here. But okay, so we're going to start off with Combine, and then we're going to move into also talking about biggest team needs now that the draft is around the corner, right? It's almost here, not that far away. So we're going to go through some Combine clips, and then we're going to talk about the biggest team needs. So here we go. I first wanted to talk about and play a clip from Gunnar Helm, Zach. This is a player that went to Cherry Creek High School. Dave Logan, who is on KOA, coached him long time, like really high school football coaching legend here in Colorado. Coach Gunnar Helm, who ended up going to the University of Texas, and this is what he had to say about the Broncos.
As a Colorado kid, obviously, I said this before. I took that trip down I-25 or up I-25 down to, it was Invesco, then Sports Authority, so it's had a couple of names, but it was kind of, it always lingers in the back of my mind. That was the dream back in the day. It's obviously shifted a little bit just to get to the National Football League, play in the National Football League, thrive in the National Football League, but I think it goes pretty unnoticed that Coach Logan's way that he develops players and he knows what's best for guys. He was asking me what my weight was when I was a freshman. So I think he always kind of had a plan that I was going to have my hand in the dirt at some point. I made the switch only a few weeks before my before my junior year of high school. Put my hand in the dirt for the first time. The guy who was playing tight end at the time was George Fitzpatrick. He was an All-American tackle. They moved him one gap in, moved me one gap in, put my hand in the dirt, and we became the two most highly recruited kids in the history of Cherry Creek. So Coach Logan, Coach Betty, they know what they're doing, and one piece of advice I would give to anyone looking to transfer into a school in Colorado, Cherry Creek's your best bet.
Gunnar, what was it like, though, meeting with the Broncos, and who'd you talk to?
Yeah, it was a dream come true. Obviously, I talked to Coach Sean Payton, GM George Payton, a lot of guys like that. Would never envision myself being that close and talking to them just about football. But it goes back to just dream big, because if you work at it, if you want to achieve it, if you're bold enough to say it, then you're bold enough to do it. So from a young age, I told people that I wanted to play in the National Football League. Obviously, it's coming to fruition this week. This is the first step to getting there in the Combine. So just doing my best, really enjoying every second of it.
Well, there you go. That is from Gunnar Helm. Again, I think this is cool because I think everybody, Zach, wants a Colorado kid to be on the Broncos, right? But here is what makes it even better is Gunnar Helm is a hell of a football player. For those of you that don't know, hell of a football player. Gunnar Helm can really put his hand in the dirt and block. He can be your inline guy, which the Broncos so desperately need. As Adam Troutman is our current option. Gunnar Helm could do a lot of the blocking stuff Adam Troutman does out there, probably even better. And then additionally can be a receiver as well. Very fluid, good route runner. Good after the catch, too. Gunnar Helm's a hell of a football player, and I would be really, really ecstatic if the Broncos were able to draft him.
Yeah, I think he'd be a great fit in Denver. I'm glad you brought up the point about, he's actually a really good football player, because we've seen the local Colorado kid get a lot of love from Broncos country. Like Philip Lindsay was a good player, but I think he was maybe treated like a great, like all-time player when maybe he wasn't quite that. I think we could see something very similar with Gunnar Helm, and perfectly fits what the Broncos need. I also love to hear him talk about how big of an impact Dave Logan had on his playing career. It's cool to see this guy who's one of the top tight ends in the draft. I think he'd be my number 3 tight end. I think number 4 is kind of like the consensus, but I'd have him at number 3. And he got there after Dave Logan moved him to tight end from wide receiver. So it's kind of cool to see that impact. I'd also, an aspect he has that even Philip Lindsay didn't. Can you imagine how cool it's going to be? The Broncos draft Gunnar Helm, let's just pretend, and he's their starting tight end at some point. Maybe it's not week 1, but at some point he's their starting tight end. And Bo Nix hits him for like a huge touchdown, a critical touchdown.
Yeah.
And Dave Logan is on that call. That is going to be such an awesome, special moment. Like I would love to, just for sentimental reasons. I think that'd be really cool. But yeah, he's the exact type of player I think they need. He's the version of Tyler Warren that's not going to go top 10. If you love Tyler Warren and you're like, oh, I hope Tyler Warren falls to the Broncos, and you know that there's a good chance he's not going to fall there. But I love what this guy does after the catch. I love his soft hands. I love his grittiness. I love his blocking ability. Gunnar Helm is the version of that, in my opinion, deserves to go in the second round. Ben Albright was on Broncos Country tonight saying he thinks he might not go until the 4th, 5th round. I think 3rd round I've often seen him projected in.
Yeah,
all that would be a bargain.
If he fell that far, I would be shocked if he fell that far. I think that I think Gunnar Helm, and what we're looking at with Gunnar Helm is he's a round 2 player, would be my prediction. I think that if the Broncos want him and they really are thinking, oh, Gunnar Helm could be the next tight end for the next decade, they should draft him in the 2nd round. If you wait any longer, a team's going to scoop him up. He's too good of a football player. Honestly, you mentioned the Tyler Warren thing. Gunnar Helm's a better blocker than Warren is, in my opinion. That's my opinion. I know some people disagree with it. I think Warren's a little overrated as a blocker, if anything. I think he has sky-high potential to be an elite blocker, the best of the bunch. Tyler Warren has that potential too. But right now, everyone likes to talk about the inline blocking, blah, blah, blah. Tyler Warren, all of his best blocks came on the move. All of them. He whiffed a lot on his inline blocks. To me, that's something that I've been arguing with people back and forth. But when he's coming across the line of scrimmage on the move and he's hitting a place mark, he's a damn good blocker. He's not very consistent as an inline, just straight up on somebody blocker right now. Gunnar Helm is better at that, in my opinion, at the moment. Round 2 player to me, like I said. I want to play another clip though, Zach. This is Jeffrey Bassa. This is Bo Nix's teammate at Oregon. This is a linebacker, and this is what he had to say.
Good. He was my locker buddy, so fun fact, so spent a lot of time with him, just learning about offense and me teaching him a little about defense, even though, he's pretty much seen it all for him, in his college days. But no, it was really good. He taught me how to be a better man on and off the field, kind of how to be a better leader. I took a lot of, aspects and knowledge from his game and applied that to mine.
I like hearing stuff like this, Zach. It's just cool hearing the character of your starting quarterback. That's what I took away from that one is Bo Nix sitting down with a linebacker. For those of you that haven't played football before, or for those of you like I haven't played football at the collegiate level, but one thing I know is the quarterback, especially the star quarterback, doesn't really have to do anything with the rest of the guys if he doesn't want to. He could be all high power, shout out Russell Wilson, with his own office. Like he could do that. For him to be sitting next to a linebacker and be this is what we're doing on offense. This is the goal to make him a better defender. It's just cool to hear.
I fully agree. I think it's so great to see that impact he had and also helping Bassa, see the game a little better. Bo Nix having all that crazy collegiate experience. He's kind of the rare type of college player that's like a vet in a college locker room. And I don't know, hearing him be that resource for a guy like Jeffrey Bassa, who's now an NFL prospect, one of the top 200 or so to get a combine invite. I think that's really cool to hear. Yeah, like you said, just good to hear that Bo Nix is that type of guy, that type of leader. We know he meets the like minimum thresholds of belonging in the NFL. It's clearly not a Paxton Lynch, like, holy shit, this guy's lost situation. How much he improves or is able to continue growing and like realize his athletic potential is going to be all the intangible stuff. And I think, clips like this point out, he's high quality in those regards. One thing I want to say really quick before we do more, I should have mentioned this off the top. My bad there. Ryan Edwards, credit to him for the Gunnar Helm clip, the Jeffrey Bossa clip we just played. And we'll have one later on too, but credit to Ryan Edwards for those past 2 clips we just played.
Yeah, shout out to Ryan. Doing a hell of a job down there at the combine. Crazy job. We have 2 more for people that are listening right now. We have 2 more clips that we're going to go through, one from Tez Johnson, one from Terrence Ferguson. Let's move on to the Tez Johnson one, speaking about the Broncos. This one's interesting for those that don't have the backstory. I'm sure all of you do, because it's talked about consistently. If you've tuned into an Oregon football game in the last 2 years, you know about Tez Johnson and Bo Nix's relationship, but this is him speaking about the Broncos.
I definitely have a chip on my shoulder. Just seeing the Broncos, it just felt like, I don't know, it just felt normal to me. It just felt like I was already there for some reason. I don't know why, but it was definitely a good meeting. Definitely enjoyed it, killed it 100%, I think. Well, I know. So, yeah, it was I enjoyed it 100%.
I love the confidence, man. I love it. He's sitting there, no, yeah, I killed it. Well, no, definitely I killed it. It went really well, actually. I loved that. Ted Johnson killed it in Mobile, Zach, too. That is a guy that just absolutely killed it down there. Really small slider frame kid, but quick slot type wide receiver. If you're interested in a guy like that, Ted Johnson would be a great fit.
Almost did the mute myself thing. I fully agree. The size does really scare me with Tez Johnson. We're talking about an 155-pound receiver, which
crazy.
Has got to be in the first percentile or so. He is tiny, tiny, tiny. A guy like Tank Dell, who was, making similar headlines for being so tiny when he was coming out of Houston, was at 165 pounds. What makes me open to the idea of Tez Johnson, though, is we've seen Tank Dell be a really great NFL receiver, and the reason he's worked out at that size is he is so explosive in and out of his breaks. Like, that is kind of his superpower. He's fast and has good short area quickness and whatnot. But he's not like an Xavier Worthy 4.22 guy or whatever. It's the explosiveness out of his breaks, and I think Tez Johnson has that, like, special movement skills. And it's more than just like he's little so he can move fast. No, like it's unique. His like jitterbug nature. So I think that'd be very appealing. The whole adopted brother angle with Bo Nix, I think is really fascinating. Just cool to reunite those brothers. It'd be cool to have any type of brother tandem on the team, I think. And you have that built-in chemistry at wide receiver. I don't know if you need another tiny receiver that Bo Nix has chemistry with. I feel like there's maybe some overlap there with the Troy Franklin experiment. But all in all, I think it's very interesting. And like you said, I love the confidence. I can so easily envision Broncos fans playing that clip that we just played in like May or whatever and being like, God, he knew he was going to be a Bronco. He's so excited to be in Denver. This is amazing. Like it lines up perfect.
Absolutely. I think I do have to say this about Tez, though, and just the fit in Denver. I struggle to see where he fits in just like role wise. I think he's a slot wide receiver. The Broncos don't really use a slot guy. They use a power slot guy. And then if you start going down the list of Sean Payton teams, there's not really the role for this guy usually. Like Mike Thomas would be a guy that would fit the same type of position that this guy's trying to play. And they're just not similar at all, right? Like they're just, or Marquise Colston.
Opposite archetypes.
Very. I just don't know if he fits. It would be really interesting to see if the Broncos drafted him. I know Bo Nix is going to be vouching for the guy. Seems like a great kid. Seems like he could be a pretty good football player. You mentioned the size. I did as well. The only guy that I think I could come off the top of my head of guys similar frame-wise would be like Tutu Atwell for the Rams, who was really, really, really skinny. I think he was around that same range.
Tutu was around that same range, but still, he's another 165 guy. It's 10 pounds, but we're talking about 10 pounds out of, in a 165 pound or 155 pound guy. That's 8% more body weight. That's like the difference between a 300 pound defensive tackle and a 325 pound defensive tackle. Like that's relatively speaking, it is a big difference. And so, we've seen Tutu Atwell or Tank Dell have success at that frame, but still worries me. All I could think about role-wise is like, could he be that return man with some of the movement skills and maybe
Mims like that?
Exactly. I think if Tez Johnson came out like a year from now and Mims has taken that next step as like a more like pure, well-rounded Z receiver, and hey, maybe we don't want him to take those hits on special teams or around the line of scrimmage with kind of these gadget looks, he can take on that gadget role and he can take on that return ability, but it's such a niche role. We're talking about so few snaps a game. His movement's special enough. I think he probably goes in the top 100 picks. If not, I think he'll be just outside that top 100 point. And I don't think the Broncos should be investing in such a luxury position at this point in their build.
Yeah. And for that clip, by the way, guys, that was Andrew Mason. So shout out to him for that Tez Johnson clip. And then we're going to be going to Jake Ferguson next, who is another Oregon football player. This is a tight end, one that I could see the Broncos draft as well. This tight end class is loaded. This one is brought to you by Ryan Edwards again. He did the first two, and he's doing the last one.
Bo's one of my best friends, and I still keep up with him to today. So being able to be with a guy that you've played with before and a great guy like that, it'd be amazing.
So that was concerning Bo Nix right there. Just speaking about how he would like to play with Bo again. That seems to be the common theme of Oregon football players or guys that have played with him, just generally great locker room guy, a guy players rally around. I don't think that's anything new to Broncos country. Like we all kind of have thought this about Bo Nix, especially this year, is like, okay, he's going to come in with a really good attitude. He's more fiery than I think people give him credit. You saw that with the Sean Payton blow up this year. Zach, here's a question I'll ask you off of this Terrence Ferguson. Do you think Bo Nix could be a quarterback that other NFL players are looking at like, oh, I want to go play with that guy, similar to his former college teammates?
I definitely think so. Again, we're talking about a guy who had such a good bond with one of his high school teammates in Tez Johnson that Tez Johnson became a literal adopted member of their family. I've never heard of something like that before, where I do think he's got a level of magnetism to him. Hearing Jeremy Bossa or Jeffrey Bossa talk about that, I think further highlights that. Terrence Ferguson, Troy Franklin, we saw that reaction around the NFL draft last year with those two being reunited and how meaningful that was for Troy Franklin and for Bo as well. I think there's clear... he's that guy, I think, in the locker room in terms of like leadership. And I think that's an area where maybe the maturity and all the college experience aids him. It's ultimately going to come down to how good is he, though, because you can be the coolest, like most enjoyable guy ever. Like I think Baker's a great hang, but he's like the 15th best quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if he's a big draw to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, for like a free agent receiver. Now, Justin Herbert, who isn't a good hang, I think you could say, but is an awesome quarterback. We're seeing that he's a draw for, the Devontae Adams of the world, the Cooper Kupps of the world. The guy's going like, oh, I'd love to play for the Chargers this offseason. So it's going to come down to how talented is he ultimately would be my take. What do you think?
I agree with you. I think so much is made up of the locker room in the NFL. Everyone likes to make a big deal. You can't the locker. This guy is going to go in there, and it's the locker. Everyone likes these grand, big takes on the locker room. Let me tell you, these guys are NFL players, professionals. If they're going to let one man ruin the locker room, they're weak on their own. Like, that's just not something realistic to me. Also, I don't think people are making financial decisions because they like somebody. I think they could prefer, like, I would love to play over there. Maybe unless it's, and I'll get to it, unless it's because of the talent level of, I have a better chance of winning a Super Bowl, or I could catch so many passes that it's going to help my paychecks later. But these guys are doing a job at the end of the day. And that's kind of what I think.
From everything I've heard, and I've never been a player on the open market, but from every report, from every former player talking about it, from every current or former agent or front office executive I've ever heard talk about these negotiations, it's 90+% of the time, and 90 is probably on the low end of that plus. So I might be 95+% of the time. The player signs with whoever is offering them the most money.
Yeah.
Now that might be measured different ways. Like the big thing right now is how much guaranteed money is in the first 3 years, because we know these NFL teams love to get out of these deals. Oftentimes the money on the later end of the contract is a little fake. I hate to say it. They kind of work in these like team options with non-guaranteed money. So, someone might have a higher max contract value, but it's considerably less guarantees. The player will go, I think, more often than not to the guaranteed money. Anyways, you can define it in different ways, but 9 times out of 10, whichever deal is financially most advantageous to player X, that's where player X is going to go.
Exactly.
And from what I've heard, the only exception to that is if it's an awesome quarterback. If I'm a receiver and I'm getting $15 million a year to play for, God, I'm trying to think of a team, the Jets, or 14.5 to play for the Chiefs. Okay, I'm going to go to the Chiefs and play with Patrick Mahomes. Or also, those are like dramatically different.
Because that could help your paychecks later too. That's something that people don't realize. Like,
yes,
I still even think that's a financial decision. I'm sitting there thinking I could have a multi-1,000-yard years with Patrick Mahomes versus whoever the hell the Jets quarterback is. It's going to help me down the line, and my second check is going to be bigger because I had success with this quarterback in Kansas City.
Yeah, I think one other might be like what the Eagles do. The Eagles get these players signed so early, and I think everyone understands, including these players, that, hey, signing this value early, with cap always inflating, these deals constantly going up, I'm maybe not signing for as much money as I could in the future. But you see the Eagles players consistently willing to do that because they understand, hey, the team is going to get me right on the back end of this. If I'm outperforming this deal, if I'm still looking good on that second contract, on that third contract, they're happy to come back around and offer me a raise early, or offer me that next deal early as well, to make the situation right. I think that's something, to George Paton's credit, he's done a good job of. Like, the financial culture around the Broncos, I think, is much healthier now than it was when John Elway ran the team.
Yeah, Elway was just letting everybody go. If it was your time to get a payday, you were up out the building, right? Don't even come over here and ask for it. The only way you're staying on the team is if we get you at the 50%. We're going down the clearance aisle. That was John and Elway through and through with the free agents, man. He didn't like paying them.
He was often right. I hate to say it,
but he was often right.
He was often right. We were letting those guys walk.
He was. All right. Well, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the show. We're going to talk about team needs, Zach. I'll let you go first. Give me a team need the Broncos desperately have, and give me a little reasoning why.
Man, I think picking like what is the top team need. I'm going to do this like a draft format or a ranking format on my end, at least. I think running back jumps out to me immediately, and it's not something I would typically say. I think you could argue like there's worse position groups. I think linebacker might be worse. I think tight end might be worse. I think there's good avenues to filling those that the Broncos have, or at least like being passable. Running back, I think, is a mess. and also would just have a much greater impact. I guess that's the big thing for me. You get a league average or above league average, you get a good tight end on this offense. I don't know how different it is. It's better. I don't think it's night day difference. You get a really good linebacker on this defense. I think it's better. I think you're removing an Achilles heel from the defense. I don't think it's a night and day difference. I think if you put an Ashton Genty on this roster, if you put there's really no good veteran backs out there, but like Ashton Genty on this roster, Caleb Johnson on this roster, Travion Henderson, I really like too. I know I'm mixed. You like DJ Giddens a lot. He's a lot of fun. You get like a dude at running back and you put him on this roster. I think this offense goes from being like the 20th best offense in the league to like the 8th. I think they'll be, if they get a good running back, and they could miss on the draft pick. So it's not just going to come down to where is the investment made. If they get a quality back in this draft, whether it be Genty or whoever the hell else, I really think they will go from being like a middling to slightly below average offense to one of the top 8 attacks in the league.
Yeah, I totally agree, Zach. And I think those, like, everyone was complaining about how many wide receiver screens the Broncos were running. Why were they running that many wide receiver screens? Not enough people asking why, though. A lot of people saying, I hate that they're doing it. Not a lot of people trying to figure it out, actually, of why they're doing it. I'll give you the reason. It's because they did not believe in their run game that much. Some of those wide receiver screens that you saw, it was an extension of the run game. We don't believe in a run game. We don't believe in Javonte Williams running the ball. We don't believe in Jalen McLaughlin running the ball, any of those guys. So what we're going to do is get it in the hands of a playmaker on the outside and behind the line of scrimmage, much like a run, and we're going to operate it very similarly. So on a first down, we're trying to get into a 2nd and 5 or something manageable, right? And we'll throw it to our screen because we think we have better odds at that than a run. I think that it would help dramatically. That's how I've been looking at the biggest team needs too, Zach, is not necessarily where the weakest point is, but what helps the team the most. I think that's a great framing of this, and I totally agree. That's how I look at it. Running back is massive. Help this team exponentially. I think when you look at all the stats like run block, win rate, and stuff like that, the Broncos' offensive line is damn good. I don't think it takes like a genius to figure out that the Broncos offensive line is really, really solid. Yet the production, the on-field production in the run game just isn't that great. What's the issue? It's very easy fix. It's running back. Ashton Genty, guy you didn't mention, Omarion Hampton would be ridiculous. Hampton down there from UNC, he would be a monster at running back for the Broncos if they were to draft him. I'm starting to think, though, that you might have to take him in the first round because I don't think you're getting him. With the Broncos' 2nd round pick, that is. But yeah, if they get a dude, Broncos offense goes up a lot. Totally agree.
Hampton was the one I was glancing over. I love me some Omarion Hampton too. You've been beating the drum on him a long time. He's going to blow up the combine this week. Everybody know. Joey Richards, I think, was the very first guy there in Broncos country. So credit where it's due. But the Broncos run game. So some stats on this run game, because I really think stats to me, I'm a data guy, as everyone knows. And I think it can be so helpful in like exposing what's really going on. Like, yes, the run game was disappointing last year, but why was it disappointing? What were those contributing factors? You look at metrics that measure kind of what the offensive line's doing in the run game. Or even the coaching, stuff like success rate and yards before contact. Yards before contact, we're looking at what's blocked up for that running back before he's running into a defender. Success rate, are you staying on schedule? If a play is drawn up well, coached well, and has good blocking, you should be able to get, you should be able to stay ahead of the 6. Generally speaking. So success rate and yards before contact, great measures for those. Broncos are top 10 in both of those last year. If you look at things that, okay, let's kind of isolate the running back now, yards after contact, where are they at? Well, Javonte Williams is the very worst running back in football in yards after contact.
That's so crazy.
Especially when you consider the player he was as a rookie. Yeah. I bet he led the NFL in that. And sorry, yards after contact per attempt, yards over expectation per carry, really bad. Rushing yards over expectation per carry. That's the metric. they're towards the bottom end of the league. That's a next gen stats metric, looking at how are things blocked up, how many yards do we think that an average running back should get here, how many are you actually getting. Broncos with Javonte, Jaleel. Javante's the worst in all these metrics, but Jaleel is way behind average too, like a bottom third of the league, bottom quarter of the league level back in his own right in these respective metrics. So imagine if you get a Saquon Barkley type, like a true difference making back into this equation, what it could mean. And I really think you look at the Eagles offense. Last year, they closed the season terribly. Nick Sirianni's almost fired. They take meetings with Bill Belichick. Like, it was dark last season in Philadelphia. Their run game or offensive metrics mirrored what I just described with the Broncos. Really good rushing success rate, really good yards before contact in terms of rushing. The running back isolated metrics, terrible, bottom of the league. They spend big at running back, and all of a sudden they've got the most dangerous, or the second most dangerous run game in football. It is, I think really we could see a similar turnaround with the Broncos. I don't think it's that far-fetched.
I don't either. I think that could definitely happen. I mean, the offensive line is just good. You look at the names on the offensive line, like for how much shit Mike McGlinchey has got here in Broncos country before, he's never been a bad run blocker at all. He's been a damn good run blocker. Ben Bowers, good run blocker. Quinn Miners, elite run blocker. Garrett Bowles, good run blocker. Like, the Broncos have players in place to be able to run the football. They were just unable last year, and we both agree it's because of the running back position. So they're going to have to go in and fix that. I'd be shocked. Zach, let me know if you agree with me. Would you be shocked if the Broncos went past day 2 and hadn't drafted a running back yet?
Yeah, if we're on day 3 of the draft and they haven't drafted a running back yet, I'd be pretty surprised. I think the only reality I can picture that is, do they make a big signing on like Aaron Jones or something? And now I think they'll still draft a running back in that reality, but maybe it's, a 4th round, 5th round pick. I do not want them to do that. I see you making a face that matches how I feel on the inside describing it. But there's the stat, like Sean Payton hasn't used rookie backs much in his career. That he really hasn't. When he's had them, they've had lower usage rates. Now, my counter to that is look at his usage rate of Alvin Kamara. It was just fine. When the dude drafted a really talented back, he had no problem using him.
Or Mark Ingram, right? Mark Ingram got plenty of carries.
He did, but he was still like, it was something like around 50% of snaps or something. He wasn't a like heavy bell cow. But to the idea that, hey, Sean Payton always uses a rotation of backs, you don't want to invest highly in a back. That also isn't true. Outside of these rookie examples I'm citing, like Alvin Kamara was getting 75% of snaps in the Saints offense. And Mark Ingram was getting plenty of snaps too, but if he has a dude worthy of those snaps, he gives him those snaps. So yeah, I think it'll probably be, honestly, I think round 1 or I think round 3.
Yeah, I think it's between round 1 and round 3 for me. I'd be shocked if they didn't. And here's the thing. I want to say this, and then I want to move on to a different position real quick, is just the reason why I cringed when we were talking about that is I am such a big fan of drafting where the draft is the strongest, and this year it happens to be running back. Don't pass on the great players at the running back position because you have a vet, an Aaron Jones vet that you might be able to get a year and a half out of. I would like him, but in addition to somebody I could, okay, cool. I'm fine with that. But I'm not doing the whole, we're passing on where the talent's the best in the draft so we could get a guy that, no, out of here. Not doing
tiny
that.
last thing on running back. Amari, everyone, because this shit's driving me crazy, and I thought about it right before we move off. Amari and Hampton is not the same prospect as Javonte Williams. They are very different prospects. There's some overlap in terms of like contact balance or physicality, and the fact they play for UNC. That's kind of where it ends. They are very different prospects, and beyond just like the difference between the two, vision being the biggest one, but beyond them just being like different flavors, Amari and Hampton is dramatically superior. Not dramatically, but Javonte Williams was like, the 40th pick. I think Amari and Hampton is comfortably worthy of like a top 25 selection.
Okay. I love that first round talk for Hampton. I love it. I'm going to go with one that's a little more off the wall here, Zach. I am tackling it the same way you did, right? You were speaking about it in maybe it's not where the Broncos fix their weakest point, but it's the position that I think would make them the strongest, the best at, right? If they were able to tackle this. And that would be just somehow getting a number one wide receiver on this team. That would be the second one for me. I've seen quarterbacks take that massive step in year two, Zach, with an elite wide receiver, with pairing that young quarterback with an elite wide receiver and how that does for that quarterback's trajectory in their career. And I think the main focus should be, how do we make sure Bo Nix takes that next step as a quarterback? And I don't see, other than running back, what else would do that other than getting an elite wide receiver in Denver somehow. It's just more unrealistic, I'd say. I say this is the most unrealistic of all of them, but tough to find, rare, and but I think it would help the Broncos substantially.
I like that. I disagree a bit, though, if I'm being honest. I think your point about like, hey, it comes down to helping Bo Nix, and this is the best way to do it, is a fair one. I think I might go tight end over it. That's if you get a guy like Gunnar Helm, we were talking about earlier, that's going to have a big positive impact on both the run game and the pass game, because Troutman is such a zero, kind of a non-factor in both departments, that adding a guy that can be a factor in both, you're improving, all phases of your offense. So I think I might go there over wide receiver. I do also like the young talent the Broncos currently have at receiver, and I'm curious to see those guys develop a little more, though maybe calling Devon Villay young talent isn't fair.
No, we have a middle-aged talent who's going into his second year, and then we got Troy Franklin,
Marvin Mims erasure.
Marvin Mims in the Deebo Samuels role, right? But like Zach, I gotta disagree with you, man. I understand what you're saying with the tight end thing. I just feel like it's kind of unrealistic to expect any tight end to come into Denver and really affect the passing game. I think that's a little unrealistic. I think why? Because there's very few tight ends that really affect the passing game. There's a lot of tight ends that can affect the passing game, like a little bit. Oh, number one wide receiver actually dramatically can affect everything going on for whoever the hell you have at tight end, the no-name guy to every other wide receiver on the team, plus your quarterback. I'm looking for a guy. When I say number one wide receiver, I'm talking about a guy that's getting me past 1,000 yards. Like what I'm talking about with a number one wide receiver. What you're talking about. So like, I feel like any tight end you draft or any tight end you sign, really, it is a substantial upgrade over Adam Troutman, but how much is it affecting the offense in the grand scheme of things? I don't think as much as a number one wide receiver.
I think there's a lot of, I think that's a very fair argument. I still might go tight end personally, but like look at the effect, a Jamar Chase or a Justin Jefferson, or like I think AJ Brown actually is a great example of like the value of a number one. Jalen Hurts has some real deficiencies as a quarterback, but I mean, you saw in the Super Bowl, it's like, shit, AJ Brown's down there somewhere. I'm just going to throw it up. He's better than their quarterback. He's going to win, and he's going to make me right. Giving Bo Nix one of those guys to simplify his process, I think would be a lot better. My next pick, honestly, would have been tight end. I feel like we've gone back and forth about that. Do you want to give your next pick?
I would go interior defensive line would be mine. I think so. Here's my thing when I'm looking at it. I'm just looking at the value of it too. I think it's inevitable. So here, Zach, tell me if I'm wrong. It's at this point, if we're going down the list and it's running back, number one wide receiver, tight end. After that, the conversation becomes linebacker or interior defensive line. Is that also
safety.
And safeties in that conversation for you?
I think linebacker, interior defensive line, and safeties. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think it's those three defensive positions are next up. And in terms of like in a vacuum, how serious of needs are they? I think they're probably right there with The three on offense we just discussed, but as you and I are both highlighting here,
what
all comes down to Bo Nix. And so those offensive ones are going to get the tiebreaker.
Yep, I totally agree. I would go out of those three, Zach. I'm going interior defensive line, and I'll tell you why. It's because if I'm setting it up like a priority list, which is kind of what we're doing here, right? Interior defensive line is a more valuable position than linebacker or safety. I'll be able to go out there and sign a serviceable safety at a relatively low dollar, and then I'll be able to go out there and sign a pretty good linebacker, as we've seen, whether it be Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton, the two guys we played, Cody Barton, like we had Justin Trinad playing last year. You can get serviceable linebacker for a low amount of money. So it can't be really said the same for interior defensive line. If you want a really good interior defensive lineman, you have to pony up. So I would set that higher up on my priority list there. Just looking at the value of all the positions and looking at how much it would cost me to get serviceable at all of them. Interior defensive line, trump safety, and linebacker for me.
I think that's a great call. I'll use this as a moment for a shameless plug. Check out KOAcolorado.com. Go over to their Broncos tab. And you can find a lot of my articles over that I'm writing for them over there. They're all my articles that I'm writing for them over there, rather. But I've looked at kind of this team needs topic. What are the biggest ones on offense, on defense? And looking at defensive line, it just kept climbing up my rankings. I ultimately had it behind safety and linebacker just because I was thinking, like, what is the worst group, kind of, rather than what turnaround would have the most impact. But using that most impact definition, I'd fully agree that defensive line deserves to be number one. They really only went four deep last year on the defensive line. I think that gets slept on with Zach Allen, John Franklin Myers, DJ Jones, and Malcolm Roach. Their fifth guy, Jordan Jackson, saw some work, but way, way, way less. And then they didn't really have a number 6. It was Wazirike. He had like 50 snaps on the season and was a healthy scratch for a lot of the weeks. So they really only went 5 deep there. That depth is something I think you have to improve.
And Zach, DJ Jones is a free agent. For those that don't know, that's something we have to point out right there is DJ Jones is a free agent. The Broncos can't go into the year 3 deep at defensive line. They will get gashed consistently. It's a rotation. You're going to need a lot of players in that group. They're going to need at least one guy that is like a starter level if DJ Jones is gone.
Fully agree. And they're lucky. Like, this is a big need, even if DJ Jones comes back, frankly, because that lack of depth, I know it didn't show up this season. Hey, the Broncos had the most sacks they've had in franchise history. It was a really good year for the defensive line. Zach Allen had a career year. You cannot put this much pressure on Zach Allen again, in 2025 and expect him to play all 17 games or play all 17 games at a high level. Realistically, he played the second most snaps of any defensive lineman in the league.
That's crazy.
It was over 1,031 snaps. Putting this in perspective, how many got over 800 here? Only 8. So 8, or he was the 9th. 9 defensive linemen played more than 800 snaps this season. So very, very, very few. The 800 is a shit ton. He's playing 25% more than that. The fact he was as good as he was for the whole season and healthy the whole season is really kind of remarkable. The Broncos need another body in that room, even if DJ Jones is back, so they're not having to put that snap load on Zach Allen. Distributing those snaps a little better would also free up the option of, hey, Zach Allen, this guy who has interior and edge versatility. Hey, what's something we talk about all the time with these Broncos edge rushers? They're a little light. They struggle against the run. We saw them get bullied against the Buffalo Bills. Well, all of a sudden, if you're taking some of those interior snaps off of Zach Allen's plate, you can justify playing him at edge on some of those early downs and beefing up the entire front on those early downs and complementing a Nick Benito and whatnot. So I think there's so many reasons why defensive lineman deserves to be in this number 4 spot, even though people might not expect it.
Yeah, yeah. And then how would you rank it between linebacker and safety, Zach? Just real quick.
Close out this top 5. I'd go linebacker. I've got some more crazy stats here. It was such a problem for the Broncos defense this past season. The depth at safety is very concerning. But yeah, the over the final few games since the start of December, the Broncos linebackers allowed a passer rating of 109 when they were targeted in coverage. The rest of the defense allowed a passer rating of just 81.5, right? So 109 at linebackers, 81.5 at anyone else on the defense, including even like edge rushers dropped in coverage. Joe Burrow had a pass rating of 108.5 and Gardner Minshew had one of 81.0. So the gap there is the exact same size. They were making, throwing the ball at any other part of this defense, they were making quarterbacks look like Gardner Minshew. Throwing the ball at these linebackers, they were making quarterbacks look like Joe Burrow. You need to be better in that regard.
Yeah, I totally agree. Linebacker's huge, especially with you don't know what Singleton's going to look like off of injury. Cody Barton and Strenat are both free agents. It gets scary. They could use 2 linebackers part of this group this year. The good thing about it is, like I said earlier, it's a relatively cheap position to find serviceable at. So the Broncos could definitely do that there. And then the just safety, the last part with that, give me your little explanation on why safety is a need for this team, Zach.
Yeah, I think PJ Locke has been a great player for the Broncos. Last year, I think he proved he's not ready for that starting job. I think that was too much for him. Now, I hope he still is back on the Broncos next year on a reworked deal. He should be, I think he's a great number 3 safety, but he's set to make a top 25-ish salary at the safety position. So he's not that level of player right now. You probably are going to, and there's very little guarantees on that. The Broncos can easily cut him, free up some money for them to attack other areas of the roster. Point being, PJ Locke was a starter, and we saw how rough the depth in that room was when Devon Key got called into the lineup, and how much Broncos country was lamenting that. Well, if they get rid of PJ Locke, which I think is one of the 2 most likely cuts we see, Alex Singleton being the other, those are the 2 easiest routes for the Broncos to free up multiple $1 million in cap space. If they decide to move off PJ Locke again, fairly likely, then Devon Key is penciled in as a starter. I mean, I think that's all you need to know. And teams use their third safety a lot. So even if PJ Locke is brought back, I think you'd ideally be bumping him down to that third safety role and adding a guy above him. But still, I think you need a better third safety than Devon Key, even if PJ Locke returns as the number 2. So it's a need on multiple levels.
Agreed. Well, there you go, guys. This was a hell of a show. This was fun. I hope you guys stayed for the whole thing. If you did, please comment stayed in the comments. So that would be amazing. I just want to know if you did. So please, guys, follow Zach on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter. Make sure you guys are keeping up with everything Let's Talk Broncos. We have a lot of things coming up. We're going to be draft live show. We have that'll be announced at some point. That's going to be a really fun thing. But yeah, guys, till next time, go Broncos.